Pete Fiutak, welcome back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, man. I hope you're doing well.
All right, so I'm going to start with a question to you to see if I'm reading it right, because I did a national show last night, and we were talking about the college football playoff rankings coming up, and I actually gave your program some credit and some love over the last few years and said, all right, let's say what if Penn State beats Ohio State this weekend, and let's say Georgia thumps Florida. And
don't start this, Pete. Pete, don't start this, man. Listen, we're having a good Friday afternoon here. We're all positive. Don't start Alabama to be out of that number one spot, man. Don't even do this. Don't even do it, man.
I'm giving you credit for being smart. Would your Alabama fans understand that if they were to just so happen to be third in the opening rankings, that it doesn't matter?
Third, we're not happy with second, man.
But I get it. I get you, but don't you kind of get that? All you have to do is these rankings don't matter, and whatever. I seem to recall when Clemson was ranked higher in the last couple of years when these things started. I kind of got the sense from Alabama fans who always go insane over everything. I was like, all right, fine. But then if you win out, if you beat Alabama and you win the SEC championship and go undefeated, you're going to be number one. You're going to be in the playoff. That the rankings don't necessarily matter. So I guess you answered my question. If this comes out and they're third or second, would you get a ton of really, really angry calls on Wednesday?
You better believe it. You better believe it. We've been talking about it all week long. All these people out here disrespecting us, talking about Alabama hadn't played nobody, hadn't beat nobody.
In card, Alabama.
Say it again.
You're going to pull the nobody believes in us card in Alabama?
Nick Saban has convinced us psychologically that nobody respects Alabama.
Of course. So I'm providing the rat poison here. Is that what I'm doing?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Well,
you don't know this, but we're going to take these audio clips that you're talking about here, and we're going to filter them over to the athletic department, and they'll play them throughout the week in the sound system.
Actually, I'm doing the absolute opposite, because Saban's ripping on the media for praising Alabama for being so awesome. I'm the one that's saying that there's a chance that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to look at resumes. And now, yes, eye test matters, obviously. That's a part of the puzzle. And I do think Alabama, no matter what's, going to be number one. But if Penn State beats Ohio State, and all of a sudden, if they do it relatively convincing, let's say they do it by double digits, then all of a sudden, I think the committee might look at that resume and say, okay, look, they just beat Michigan and they went to Ohio State and won at Ohio State. And if Georgia stumps Florida, then it depends on how much they love Notre Dame. If Notre Dame beats NC State, then all of a sudden that win looks fantastic. And if you look at Alabama's resume, no one's dogging Alabama. No one's saying that they're not amazing. But if you look at the resume, Florida State right now is just a 3-4 team. It's going to be Boston College. It's going to be just a mediocre team. Tennessee is a mediocre team. All these teams that they've played have been all right, but there isn't that one win on there that you can just say, okay, that's as good as beating Ohio State at Ohio State. So I'm just saying it would be interesting to see what would happen if Alabama got dogged. I don't think they will, because I think the eye test is going to make them at very worst number two, but I do think they're probably going to be number one.
Okay, but going into the conversation, and I'll play along here for just a couple of minutes. What if Penn State goes to Columbus, Ohio? Let's say that they beat teams the way that they've been beating teams. Let's say they beat them by, 17, 21 points, 24 points.
Even 10 points. Even a good performance, a 10-point win, and they look pretty good doing it.
Then you might make an argument. Because Penn State, they beat a lot. They look very impressive. They look like a solid football team.
The other stuff, again, if you were to play Alabama versus Penn State tomorrow, I'd take Alabama by 2 touchdowns. But no matter what, but I think just based on resume and based on that, because remember Clemson, if Clemson hadn't blown it against Syracuse, it would have been the easy number one first team in the college football playoff ranking, just because the resume, because what they've done to beat Virginia Tech, Louisville, Auburn, the 3 top 15 teams. On resume alone, Clemson would have been the absolute, no question about it, number one team in the college football playoff rankings if it was undefeated. Obviously, that didn't happen. Doesn't mean Alabama's bad. It just means that they have to look at numbers and resume and argue each position. And in that room, they're going to have to go to your scenario here. in that room, they're going to have to argue, hey, look, why are we picking Alabama ahead of Penn State, who beat Michigan, blew them out of the water, and then beat Ohio State and Columbus? Where's the great win? Because they're going to look at the straight numbers and be like, okay, where is that great win? And then the argument's going to be, okay, we just think Alabama's better. We're going to put Alabama higher. But it's going to be at least a debate if that happens.
All right, let me ask you, who's going to win this game tomorrow in Columbus, Ohio, from your perspective?
There's no excuse for Ohio State. It's the better team. Ohio State's got more athletes. It's more talented. If Northwestern and Indiana can shut down Saquon Barkley, then certainly Ohio State can. It's at home. They've had 2 weeks off. There's a revenge factor. There's just everything is there for Ohio State to win this game. The one concern is it's going to be lousy out. It's going to be about 42 degrees and rain. Now, they do play in the field turf, and the grip is fine. There shouldn't be a whole bunch of slipping and sliding. But still, when that happens, that's probably going to slow the game down a little bit from what would probably have been a track meet otherwise. I'm going to stick with my Ohio State pick. I'm going to stick with my belief that I don't really believe in Penn State, even though Penn State Joe Bot fans keep yelling at me that, yes, I'm wrong just every week on this team. But I'm going to stick with my initial hunch that Ohio State's pulling this off.
All right, let me flip this around here for just a couple of minutes. If Ohio State loses tomorrow, are they out of this playoffs?
Oh, yeah, Ohio State's out. I mean, what do we – I mean, assuming that we're keeping with the precedent of the first 3 seasons of the college football playoff, we just have to assume that a 2-loss team, no matter what, is out. Because Penn State should have been in last year, over Washington. I mean, Washington played, like the 121st ranked schedule in the country. It just so happened to be 12-1 instead of 11-2. Penn State just so happened to play Pitt instead of a Little Sisters of the Poor cupcake non-conference game like Washington did, and it was 11-2, and it got knocked out. So what we know, what the College Football Playoff Committee does is, one, it always goes by who it thinks the best teams are, and then what we've learned is it's almost impossible to get in if you are a 2-loss team. So at this point, I think if Ohio State loses, it's out. But if Penn State loses, there's still a shot. If it loses a tight game, let's say the weather's kind of lousy, and all of a sudden it's like 24-20, and they battled hard, Ohio State then probably goes on to win the Big Ten championship, and Penn State's still kind of alive in this.
All right, so Pete, let's go to another game that really grabs us. I mean, like what we're doing here in Tuscaloosa is we're not doing the whipping this week. We're just going to sit back and watch everybody else get whipped up on this week, and we have nothing to play for this weekend. NC State at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is now creeping back into this college football playoff conversation. What do you see happening here?
All right, so to put this in Alabama terms, and I get it, we're all positive. It's Friday. We're all happy. I'm just saying, in the what-if overall crazy scenarios of the world, the biggest thing out there for Alabama fans is, one, you want Georgia to keep winning because you want 12-0 Georgia no matter what in the SEC championship game. And two, you want all the other X factors out of the picture, because the one thing you don't want are obvious picks to go to the college football playoff, just in case something bad happens and Alabama loses one game along the way and loses the SEC championship game. So if that were to happen, if 12-0 Georgia plays 12-0 Alabama, the idea is that no matter what, both teams are probably in, unless there are other major options, which means you want NC State to win. You want to get rid of this Notre Dame threat, because if you look at what Notre Dame has done, the one loss was to Georgia by 1 point, could have gone either way. They blew up Michigan State, gave them their only loss, won by 20. They're now going to have this schedule. They have to go to Miami. They got to go to Stanford. Wake Forest is a decent bowl-bound team. Navy is a decent team. NC State, they destroy USC. All of a sudden, that's on the whole, the schedule is looking amazing. And the one thing you don't want is for the loser of the SEC championship game, you have to worry about, do we get in over an 11-1 Notre Dame? Because 11-1 Notre Dame probably gets in over the 11-1 or the 12-1 SEC championship game loser.
Well, what if that team is Georgia and they beat Notre Dame square up head to head? Does that really matter?
Yeah, actually, you're right. That would probably change it up. I guess I'm saying if Alabama were to happen to lose, because
we're not going to lose. Come on. We're not going to lose.
Of course not. But if the bus doesn't show up and something weird happens and Herschel Walker has some eligibility left, it's crazy pie in the sky stuff. But, yes, you're right. If Georgia were to lose that game at 12-1, it would get in over Notre Dame.
Okay. Yeah, see, now I like that. I hope that will work out. Two SEC teams. Pete, would this expand college football? Because we gave college football the playoffs because of Alabama and LSU in 2011. If there was two SEC teams in this Final Four in college football playoffs, would we be to 6 or 8 by 2018, 2019, 2020? What do you think?
No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, the College Football Playoff Committee really is not reactionary like everyone kind of thinks it is. If there were last year, there would have been a bigger screaming fest over Penn State not getting in. Because if that happens, if you have two SEC teams getting in, it means there aren't other obvious teams that can get in. If you're as we know right now, if you're an undefeated Power 5 conference champion, you are going to get into the college football playoffs no matter what. There are not going to be 5 undefeated Power 5 conference champions. There can't be now because there isn't one out of the Pac-12. So if you win one of the other 4 conferences and you're undefeated, you're in. If you're a one-loss Power 5 conference champion, you are almost certainly going to get in. Washington set that precedent last year, and there probably aren't going to be 5 one-loss or undefeated Power 5 conference champions. So for 2 SEC teams to get in, what you need is a 2-loss Pac-12 team, like a 2-loss maybe ACC champion, maybe a 2-loss Big 12 champion, and then that gets in. Where this gets tricky is what happens if you have a bunch of one-loss Power 5 conference champs, and then all of a sudden the committee decides, you know what, screw it. Georgia and Alabama are just 2 of the 4 best teams in the country. We're going to put them both in.
Pete, let me ask you, and because you're a great college football analyst and you analyze the game from a very fair perspective, how would you rank the conferences right now? And obviously we'll put the Pac-12 out and about because we think they're out of the college football playoffs, but how would you rank them right now?
Although you could make the argument that it depends on how you want to define ranking and how great a conference is, because from top to bottom, if Oregon State isn't miserable anymore, that's not a bad conference. It doesn't have the top shelf teams like some of the other leagues do, but that mid-level is pretty strong. I mean, Cal's not that bad. Arizona and Arizona State have really stepped it up. You know, USC for just getting blown up by Notre Dame isn't all that awful. But you're right, it's not going to be at the top there, but it's pretty solid from top to bottom. The ACC is really taking a step back. With Florida State having problems this year, Miami's undefeated, but I think they're shaky. Clemson already lost to Syracuse. So the whole idea that the ACC is, you know, the best conference in college football, like everyone was trying to chirp in July, that's just not happening. The Big Ten's all right. You know, the Big Ten's got the stars up top. I mean, you know, what Michigan State's doing now, Wisconsin has yet to play anybody, but the rest of that West is just too light. So it's all right. The Big 12, you still have Kansas, which still sort of stinks, but the rest of the conference just isn't that bad. So I would almost probably say on a bulk status, you might have to say the Big 12 is up there right now, but still, I mean, the SEC is still good. I mean, the SEC is still right there, but there just isn't one dominant league out there. You're saying this is our year for this league, outside of the killers up top on the SEC.
All right, Pete, you got any locks for the weekend? You have any locks? I mean, we need some investment advice. I know there's plenty on collegefootballnews.com, but what's Pete Fiutak's locks for the week?
Yeah, on the lower end, I think down in your area, I think UAB. I mean, catching a lot of points against Southern Miss. I mean, 12.5 points, whatever. That's just a lot of points against the Southern Miss team that's, you know, all right, but certainly isn't putting up points in bunches and is needing a whole bunch of help. On a bigger national sort of scale, I wish I could dive in further and just say Ohio State is the absolute guaranteed lock. But just, again, that weather is just such an issue at this point. That's a problem. I do like West Virginia getting 7.5 at home against Oklahoma State. That's going to be a shootout of big-time proportion. Will Grier is a much, much better playmaker that I think a lot of people want to give him credit for. Indiana is for Maryland. I think this is a good Indiana team to watch out for. Yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend. A lot of crazy stuff happening, and it's going to be one of those real shakeout weekends.
Pete Fiutak, I appreciate you, man. Thank you again for joining us here in college football, and I'm glad we were able to remove that Alabama number 3 ranking out of your mind before you ever get it out.
I just want to see what would happen if it were to happen.
We would burn down the building of the college football playoffs, man. We'd burn it down.
Oh, that's your dream world. You'd have content for weeks, man.
Yeah, but I'll take the sacrifice of just having to do hard work.
You know better. You know it doesn't matter. Until the end.